Hello and welcome to Inside the Dojo Unreal Experiences. I'm your host, Jesse Segal, and today we are not just talking about virtual production. In fact, we'll be talking about vision, about what it means to blend artistry, technology, and storytelling into something that resonates and something that moves people. Our guest joining us today embodies that vision. Akintayo Adewole is a rare kind of a creator, someone who lives equally in the technical and the emotional. With over 2 decades of experience in AV systems, filmmaking, music, and virtual production, he's built a career and a company around empowering stories that might otherwise go unseen. From designing real-time cinematography tools and shooting breathtaking visuals to composing music for live events and building games for cultural icons, Tayo's work is as layered and intentional as the frames he composes. Today's session is more than a tutorial. It's a masterclass in creative ownership, how to take control of your toolkit, your process, and most importantly, your voice. So if you've ever wondered how to bridge the gap between traditional cinematography and cutting-edge virtual production, or if you're ready to create with purpose and precision, you're exactly where you need to be. Please join me in welcoming a true innovator, a storyteller, and a friend, Akintayo Adewole, to Inside the Dojo.
Wow, that's quite the introduction, Jesse. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I really, really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for joining and taking the time to check out some of these workflows and some of these tools that I've been working on. I hope that they're as helpful for you as they've been helpful for me, and that I'm able to impart some kind of wisdom or some sort of knowledge. And as well, if you have questions, I'm sure I can learn just as much from you guys as well. So welcome to this talk. It's called Framing the Future, Unreal Engine Tools and Techniques for the Modern Cinematographer. And again, thank you, Jesse, for inviting me to be a part of this.
Hey, I wanted to add a little bit more spice to it, but I believe what you'll be presenting today is going to be spicy enough.
I hope so. I hope so. I'm a hot sauce guy too. So,
Yeah.
I just wanted to start off by kind of talking a little bit about what my backstory has been. I don't come from like the traditional sort of CG education. I didn't go to art school. A lot of what I've been doing is self-taught, but in fact, I kind of came from an engineering background. You know, I've kind of been living a double life for the last 20 years or so, as probably many of you have been doing as well. But I was grounded in engineering design. So in the early 2000s, I started doing audiovisual design, but all the while I had always been doing some sort of creative work. So that started off with me doing music composition and music production. I was in the music industry for a little bit for a while. Then started adding music direction to that. Next thing you know, I'm adding photography on top of that. And I started shooting events and shooting portraits. And then that started piquing my interest in filmmaking. So again, I've been doing both of these things side by side for a very long time. And then the pandemic hit. So when the pandemic hit, everybody started to ask a question about what is it that they're going to do? How they're going to keep things going? So I started to kind of think a little bit outside the box. I ended up coming across Matt Workman's, cinematography database. And, that was kind of like my first introduction to Unreal Engine. Fell in love with it. Definitely saw the future in it and started to kind of make my sort of plan for maybe how can I move from corporate and move completely into creative. So, I was pondering over the next few years, and then I ended up making a move. I was in New Jersey for about 20 plus years and moved down to Maryland. I figured that this was the perfect time for me to kind of go ahead and do my own thing. So in 2022, I moved down to Maryland with my family. And then in the beginning of 2023, I started my creative studio, Darker Pixels. But I knew that YouTube tutorials weren't going to cut it for me in terms of just my understanding of the engine. And so I really wanted to formalize my training. I ended up doing a stint at CG Spectrum, started off as a student, then was a TA for the real-time 3D and virtual production program, and then ended up becoming a mentor more recently, a few months ago, for the real-time 3D and virtual production program. As a part of my education, I also was in the fellowship with Jesse and with many other talented individuals for the animation fellowship in 2023. Deep dive into animation, really understanding the animation tools was an excellent and traumatic experience that we all share with one another.
You need some grind.
Yeah, it was very serious, but it was extremely helpful and hopeful for all of the work that I wanted to do in Unreal. And then just this past year, I ended up becoming an Unreal Authorized instructor, really focused on like look development and cinematography. I'm excited to explore that badge even further. And then the other thing I have here under education and Unreal is I also went headfirst and developed a game in Unreal Editor Fortnite. This was actually for Snoop Dogg. Really great experience from soup to nuts, and it's not something that I'm doing a whole lot with, but it was an experience that I wanted to at least share with you in terms of my understanding and extension of Unreal. All that time, I was also really trying to understand the cinematography tools inside of Unreal. And the Cinema Camera Actor is an amazing feature of Unreal Engine. It's one of the reasons why I was really gravitated towards Unreal in the first place, because of my background in photography. Everything was one-to-one, or pretty much one-to-one, when it came to lighting, when it came to focal length, when it came to aperture. All of these different things I already understood. So it was a warm welcome into the engine, and I wanted to kind of explore that even further. And so, I found myself over the last couple of years just, trying to figure out how I can make things better for cinematographers in Unreal. So today, I just wanted to kind of go over a few things. One is the virtual camera, but not the virtual camera in detail, but more specifically how you bridge the real world with the virtual world to create some lifelike and organic movements. And then also wanted to go over a couple of different plugins that I developed over the last 6 months or so that I felt like were areas that I would say that I guess they were missing, in terms of the engine, but I felt like there's something that would definitely be beneficial for cinematographers in Unreal. And then the last thing I wanted to go over is a composition study series that I started utilizing the tools that I created to really kind of bring everything full circle so people can really kind of understand why these tools are important in the first place.
This is a great topic that you're touching upon, Tayo, because a lot of indie creators are now coming into the virtual production, or as we call it, the real-time virtual production. It's more than just the ICV effects or green screen compositing, right? So
Yes.
using the tools built inside a simulation engine, and especially for a person like yourself who is a director of photography, others who are in the industry with maybe 10, 15 or more years of experience, they are currently feeling nervous with the emerging technologies. And I think what you have achieved and created with your tools is just going to be a conduit for them to transition into this next realm of cinematography, and narrative telling.
Yeah, I think that's what I was hoping for, even for myself, was to really kind of understand like how this is supposed to work for people who are working inside of the real world, right? Who's doing actual live action. Like how can this be a comfortable transition for those who are moving into Unreal to really truly understand the power of it? So yeah, thanks for that sentiment. That's definitely something that's been on my mind.
Yours whenever you want to start.
Have I been sharing I haven't been sharing my screen this time?
Please.
Oh, you know what? I thought I was sharing my screen. Let's go back here. Let's share this. This is the story that I just went over. I thought you guys could actually see it. But again, yeah, what we'll focus on for this talk is the cinematography tools inside of Unreal. And so the first portion I wanted to go over was a course that I put together called Camera Tracking Workflows, where I really did a deep dive into an application called VCam. If you don't know what VCam is, it's an application that Epic Games developed to create essentially a portal or a window into Unreal Engine, using a virtual camera. So using an iPad or an iPhone or an Android device, you can actually see it's a window essentially into the virtual world. You have a lot of cinematographers and directors who will use it for doing surveys inside of virtual spaces to figure out where they want to shoot within that virtual environment. But it's also used for doing actual camera work as well inside of Unreal. So I wanted just to talk a little bit about that, but more specifically, how you use a protocol called OSC to control parameters of a cinema camera actor inside of Unreal. So you can kind of get that sort of real world feel to your camera movements when you're actually holding a camera rig. So And that camera rig looks something like this. I actually have it here as well. So this is something, I think this is kind of like a touch point for people who are working in live production, where you want to feel the camera. You really want to get a sense for how that camera feels. So this is a rig that I put together, all parts from Amazon. I think Jesse's going to share this a PDF with you later on. All of the links for all these different parts and pieces are embedded into that PDF. But just some of the main components is first of all this the iPad that I have here. Now this could be an iPad, could be an iPhone. I do suggest an iPad because an iPhone is kind of small to see your virtual camera through. And then also too, it provides some additional weight, and it's counterbalanced with the weight of this V-mount battery on the back here. And then this battery is also powering not only the virtual camera, but it's also powering my smartphone, which I'm going to use for interfacing with some additional parameters of the Cinema Camera Actor inside of Unreal. And then all this other stuff is just your typical, sort of run-of-the-mill, configuration when it comes to putting together a shoulder rig. So, and it feels really comfortable here. You can see I'm kind of wearing it here on my shoulder here. You guys can see that okay. And then it also gives me direct access to the phone right from my thumb here. And I'll show you in a second what that looks like in Engine.
Well, Tayo, I can definitely say what you've created here is something that so many people only dream of having in their arsenal. Personally, let me go bring my credit card. you can put another one together when you get any time. And
right.
I'm ready to buy it today.
And that's the thing too. This is not like it's not expensive to do this. I mean, some of the parts on here may be pricier than others, but you can really get into this very easily at a very low cost. I could even share the spreadsheet I have for the cost. I think this might have come together to be about almost $400, but you could certainly get it to closer to, $300, $250 to put together a rig like this. Not including the iPad. Not including the iPad, not including the iPhone.
So, as you mentioned, after this call, we can share this, and what you've put together, it directly links to that product on Amazon, so which is amazing.
Yes, absolutely. The next slide here, I just wanted to touch base really on what I wanted to go over inside of Unreal for this camera tracking workflows. More specifically, we're not going to do the design layout that you would have for Touch OSC, which you can kind of see over here, but just on the Unreal side, what it takes to add the remote control preset asset, adding an actor parameter, or more specifically a cinema camera parameter to the preset for control, and then how you bind that control to OSC so that you can actually control it with your phone. So I'm going to go ahead and share a different screen. Let's go to here. And I already have this kind of set up, but we will kind of break it down and build it back up again. But right now, I currently have the VCam application running on my iPad here, and it's currently pixel streaming from the Unreal session to my iPad here. I'm also going to bring over here, I'm also casting my iPhone here so you can see what I'm doing with the different controls here. And what I currently have set up here is focus and then buttons for selecting specific focal lengths. So right now here, I think I have this kind of set up to do some rack focus on these donuts here. So just so you can see how it works here, you can see I'm now controlling a parameter. Let me close that out. I'm now controlling a parameter within Unreal. And let me show you this a bit more specifically here before we break this down here. Let me select that VCam actor so you can see the parameter that's being controlled. And it's this one right here. It's the manual focus distance. And you'll see those numbers start to move. You can see those numbers moving here. And so again, you can do this with any, just about any parameter with inside of Unreal. It doesn't have to be even the Cinema Camera Actor. You can use this remote control preset asset to control meshes. You can use it to control lighting. You can use it to control anything that exposes its properties to the remote control preset asset. And you know that it's doing that by, if you look on the right-hand side here, you see these little, these squares with the little lights above them. these are all assets that you have the potential to control through the remote control preset asset. So just to kind of walk it back a little bit, I wanted to show you how you actually add a binding for an additional control. So in this case, if I go back to, let me bring over this, we have these button controls here. So I wanted to show you really quickly how you bind these controls to the remote control preset asset and provide control for that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back into the VCam actor here, pull up the details panel, and for the focal length, we're going to need the current focal length parameter here. So what you're going to notice here is when I click on this button over here on the left-hand side, I have this remote control preset asset which was created. And just so you know, you create the remote control preset asset by right mouse clicking. You go to remote control preset. You also have to make sure that this is enabled as a plugin under your plugins, just so you know. But this is how you access this remote control preset asset for configuration. So if I go back to the VCam actor here and manual focus, not manual focus, this is what we're doing, current focal length, I'm going to click this button here, and you're going to see now it's been added as one of the parameters for control here. So now I have to select this, and the next thing to do is to add bindings for this. Now I need to add a binding for each of the different buttons here that I have on my iPhone right now that's communicating via OSC. Let me also make sure that this is pinned so that I don't have to make sure this is pinned always on top. Here we go. Okay, so to add a binding, just click the add binding button. And what you're going to get is an input range here. Now, this input range is basically, for instance, if I go back 1 second and to look at the focus I have here, right now, the focus at 0 is the bottom, 1 is the top. And so you can set your focus range. Right now, I had it at 50 centimeters to 125 centimeters for those donuts that I was looking at here. So right now, this is at 0 at the bottom here. I'm at 50 centimeters in terms of my focus distance. I'm somewhere around 135 here as I go up here, and then as I get to the top here, I think I'm at a total of 125 centimeters there. So that's just how that works, and it works for all the different buttons and all the different controls that you have inside of this asset here. So I'm going to click back over to focal length here. I'm going to actually make this a little bit bigger here so you can just see it here. You see what we're actually trying to control here. It's the current focal length. And for the current focal length, what I need to do.
Okay, we have a freeze.
I want to set 18, 24, 50, and 85 millimeters. So for the first one here, I'm going to type in 18 millimeters. And on the high side, I want it to be 18 millimeters. So no matter what the range is, it's always going to be 18 millimeters, whether it's at 0 or whether it's at 1. Now, this is for a button press, so really there's only 2 values anyway. It's either 0 or 1. But if I had to put this on a slider, it would still be always 18 millimeters for that focal length if I was to choose that as a control. But in this case, we're going to choose this button control here, 18 millimeters. I'm also going to go ahead and add additional bindings for the same property for the focal length. And we're going to do the same thing, except now we're going to do 24 millimeters and 24 millimeters. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to add a binding for, sometimes this window, you can't see the slide there. We're going to do 50 millimeters and 50 millimeters. And then we're going to add one more binding for 85 millimeters and 85 millimeters. So now we actually have to record and bind these button presses to the remote control preset asset. And the way that you do that is that you select this record button here, and this will turn red here. And because I'm already connected over the network via OSC between my phone and this Unreal session, if I now just click on 18 millimeters, you see that button 1 registered here. And now button 1 is tied into 18 millimeter, that focal length. I'm going to turn off the record button. I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to hit the record button for 24 millimeters. I want to hit the 24mm button. And now that's bound to that parameter as well. And we'll just continue to do the same thing for the last two. We'll hit record here. I'm going to hit the 50mm button. Now I'm at 50mm. We're going to turn off the record button, and then we'll hit the record button one last time. And I'm going to hit 85mm. And now we have a focal length of 85mm. Always have to remember to turn off this record button, because if you don't, you may override it inadvertently. So you just want to be careful of that. I'm blocking my face here as, as I'm trying to show this to you. So that's how you bind additional controls here. So let's take a look at that a bit more closely. I'm just going to move this over.
Akintayo, can I just interrupt? We have a question.
Yes, please.
From Jesse, who asks, how did you get this phone user interface? And is that through remote control plugin, or which way?
Yes. In order to get the phone connected to an Unreal session, I'm using a few different things. One is a remote control asset. It is a remote control, is a plugin that you have to enable inside of Unreal. And so in that plugin, it allows you to create a remote control asset. So if I right mouse click here in the browser and I go to remote control and I select remote control asset, that's what this window is over here on the left hand side. It's that remote control asset. So you do have to enable it as a plugin. That's one part of it. The other parts of it too, if I just go up to plugins here really quickly just to show you, is you also need to make sure that you have your OSC plugins enabled as well. So if I go to type in OSC here, I have the remote control protocol for OSC enabled. And I also have the OSC open sound control plugin enabled. So you need these two in order to maintain communication between your device, again, whether that's an Android device or an iOS device, and your Unreal session. And then if I close that out for a second, and then I just show you briefly on the configuration side, if I go to project settings here, and I scroll down to the plugin section, and I go to remote control OSC protocol here, you now have in here the IP address, because this is all being done over the network. This is not like Bluetooth or anything. It's just over, it's over Wi-Fi. So this is all on my local network here that I'm doing this passing of communication. And so this is the IP address of my local machine here and the port on which it's going to receive commands over OSC. And so the same IP address, and I can even show you this on the phone too. If I come out of here and I go into, one second there, I go into my configuration here for OSC, you see I have the host address is this Unreal session here. And so on my phone knows where to send the OSC control information to. And that's how it's connected. This is just strictly OSC. This is not actually dependent upon VCam. That's actually a separate application that's running alongside this, but this is a direct OSC communication and control from a device into your Unreal session.
And the OSC plugin is available on the Google Play Store as well as App Store.
Yes, for the VCam application. Yes.
And that's is that the Epic Games app?
For this one is actually by a company named Hexler, and the name of the application is Touch OSC. And if I hit, let me go back here, and I can even show you. You see how this on this phone here, this is what the interface looks like for designing your layout. And you can do all sorts of sliders. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let me go back and hit the undo button here.
Don't want to change your, but this is amazing because for a director of photography who wants to simply walk around with the camera rig, like you are showing us, can focus on framing the shot, and they can be a second person who can be doing the focus pull and everything else, the way we traditionally do in a studio anyway with the remote focus puller.
Right, exactly. And whether you're doing it with your phone, or I'm even looking at integrating something like this. This is a little rotary dial here. I don't know if you guys can see that. But you can also bind this to either MIDI or OSC and get that same level of control with something that's maybe a little bit more familiar than a slide on a phone. But for a focus puller who's actually pulling focus, they might want a rotary dial to use instead. So something like that could be really helpful. I hope that answered your question, Jesse, in terms of the connection between the two. And again, this application, the Touch OSC application, actually, let me go ahead and go back into play mode here. That Touch OSC application is something you can download from the iOS store or from the Android store. That's not an Epic Games application, but it's Hexter.net.
Yep.
So let's go back here. Okay, so we were able to get focus control in here. Let's just verify that we have that. Let's go back and let's punch out to 18 millimeters. Lost control here. Let me see, my focus is still working. Sometimes you may lose connection, and so sometimes the way that I'm able to mitigate that is by clicking out, clicking back in. Let me see here. There we go. Sometimes you just have to, it's one of those things in Unreal, you know, sometimes you just have to click away from the property and then click back into the property and then it reestablishes itself. But I think we still have focus control here.
Yeah, it seems to be working. And now I want donuts.
Like focus can actually, I think our focus distances our focal lengths are working there. And at that, there, the focus control is still working there too. Yeah, that's a little too close. But yeah, so that gives you an idea of just the type of control that you can connect between external devices like this, you know, and your Unreal session. I think we wanted to just also briefly go over how you might record using the VCam application, and what that sort of workflow might look like for someone who's just doing a bunch of different takes. They want to kind of test it out and get a feel for it. So why don't we go ahead and do that really quickly? I'm going to move this out of the way. And we already have our take recorder open here. Now, what's really cool about the VCam application, if you're not familiar with it, is that you have a lot of control directly from the VCam device itself. And everything that you see here in terms of this heads-up display is also directly available on the iPad or your Android device. So what I want to hit now here, let me set this shot up here. Let's go back to where we were with the donuts here. Let me make sure that my focus is working here. Not bad. Now I might want to overshoot here. Like my focus is landing on it, but maybe I want to overshoot, or not overshoot, I'm sorry. Maybe I want to, I guess it is overshoot my focus. So one of the things you can do here, if I go back to my focus here, I could simply change the high end. Instead of it being 125, I could say make that 150 centimeters, right? And I can come back here to where are my donuts? There they are. And now I'm overshooting past that first row of donuts, going to the second row of donuts, because now I'm at 150 centimeters. If I wanted to exaggerate that a little bit more, it's just a matter of me going in here and say I make this 250, right? Now my focus is going from 50 all the way past that. You're gonna see the difference there. So you can make it as the range as short or as long as you need to, based on each individual shot. And you can just go in and change it inside of the remote control preset asset. So now I'm just going to record what we're doing here. I'm going to hit the record button directly from the VCam interface here. And you're going to see it's starting to record now. So I'm just doing a take here. I'm recording actually into a sequence. I think it stopped right there. I can actually review this take. I can also do this directly from the VCam interface. I'm going to hit this takes button here. I'm going to go into the last shot that was taken here. I'm going to hit the I. And if I hit play now, you're going to see that shot now being recorded. All the information that we were doing over OSC. It was a very short shot. Sorry about that. We could do something a little bit longer. But it just gives you an idea of what's possible. Now, if I wanted to do another take, all I simply do is hit the record button again. Oh, actually, let me get out of this view first. Go back into the heads-up display. Let's give it 1 second to find itself. I'm going to close that. I'm gonna hit record. Actually, let me find a different scene. Let me try a different focal length. Let's use this focal length, and let me record again. Oops, here. Get out of there. Hit the record button. Now my focal range may not work for this shot. It looks like it was in the way of something there. It kind of works, but my focus distance, the throw should be a lot longer. But there we go. We just recorded that shot. We can go ahead and we can review that take as well. Let's see what that one looks like. Hit the eye here. Hit play. And now we can see that shot that we recorded as well.
And of course, the recording is stopping because of the timeline start and end points. So if you wanted longer, you just make the timeline as long as your shot would be.
Absolutely. I just flubbed and didn't make it longer here. If you just move this bar here, you can record for a much longer period of time. I can actually make this smaller here. And then you can scooch this over and you can drag this out to as long as you need to for recording here, for recording your shot. So I hope that was helpful. That's really what I wanted to show primarily for you know, bridging the real world into the virtual world and giving as much of a handheld, organic, you know, real world type of feel to the work that you're doing inside of Unreal. Now, of course, you can still do all of this with keyframes. You know, you can go right into the timeline and you can record positions. You can use things like the space mouse, which I found to be really useful for creating and setting up shots as well. Or you can do it by hand, you know. But if you're looking for a more organic feel, particularly if you're doing like a handheld shot, sure, you can add camera shake. That's definitely an option to shot. But if you want your own camera shake and you want that real feel to it, then using something like this sort of configuration, I think, can really be useful and really, really helpful. So let me go ahead and stop sharing and present something else. Actually, I won't stop sharing. I'll just present another screen here. Let's go back to.
Yeah, you touched upon the fact that manually, of course, within the Unreal Engine sequencer, an artist working on a sequence or a shot can create their own camera shakes. There are plugins that are pre-made camera shakes and everything else, and they can just add that. But one thing that really I feel most creatives, or especially indie creatives coming into the industry, are lacking is the fact that what differentiates just a visionary from a director of photography or a cinematographer. It's the way they actually frame up a shot, the way they move to, you know, with the actual camera, whether it's a Blackmagic cinema camera or an iPhone camera, or could it be an RELX or a Red Raptor on a crane,
Right.
or dolly, you know. So how does that work when working within inside an Unreal Engine?
You mean like getting the actual sort of camera feel, or more specifically, how do you get that specific or parameters from that specific camera kind of into Unreal?
So the feel, you know, because at the end of the day, there's active storytelling and there's passive storytelling.
Yeah.
The active storytelling is the wonderful, beautiful shot that we had there. I just wanted to reach out and grab a donut. That's the active storytelling, right? But the passive storytelling is you, as the director of photography, as the cinematographer, actually shooting that scene, right? And that's where the storytelling aspect is taking place.
Oh,
rather than looking like a video game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's why things like this are, and you can also attach VCam to, you could attach it to a what's the word I'm looking for? A steady cam. You know, it doesn't just have to be on something like this. If you want to get that real world feel built into, and actually let me put it right back for a second. Let me go back and share the screen here just so that we're looking at the same thing here. Present something else, entire screen. Let's go back to here. If if you're trying to get that real world feel, I don't really know how else you could do it better. Actually, let me qualify that statement, right? There are other tracking tools aside from VCam. You know, there's Moses, there's HTC Vive. You know, I have an HTC Vive system in here. That's how I actually started out initially. I just find the VCam application to be convenient, extremely convenient, up and running very quickly. Is it as precise as, say, like a Vicon system? No, it's not. And that's okay, depending upon the type of filmmaking that you're doing. For something that's a handheld shot like this, you know, it being off, you know, in each direction a few millimeters probably doesn't really make a difference. If you're doing motion matching and you really need to track things very, very tightly, then this may not be the solution. You may need to use a Vicon system or a Moses or something that's going to be, you know, tight within fractions of millimeters, you know. And that's definitely something that's to be taken into consideration for live action, especially on big budget films and so forth, where that precision is paramount and it's critical. So this is, you know, one of the tools that you can keep inside of your tool belt. You know, it's not the only solution that's out there, but I just find it, especially if you're an indie filmmaker in particular, and you just want to get in and start shooting and something that's usable and that feels good, and it conveys the storytelling that you're trying to do. I find that VCam is a great starting point for doing that. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely.
So let's go to the next section here. Let me go back to our slideshow here. And cinematography tools. So I wanted to talk next about some of these cinematography tools that I've been able to put together. Just a quick kind of story behind that is, you know, after I had created this sort of VCam workflows course and was playing around with some of these sort of some of these sort of workflows with regards to the shoulder rig and, you know, using OSC for external control, I started to kind of investigate cinematography more and just really kind of study up more on cinematography myself. You know, yes, I came from photography. I was dabbling in cinematography, but I still had more to learn. So I started kind of immersing myself in cinematography courses, workshops, getting hands-on feel for cameras and that type of thing. And one of the things that I came across was camera composition. Camera composition, I'm a self-taught photographer, so I've been using the rule of thirds. That's always been my go-to for a very, very long time. The rule of thirds is great, but it's not the only composition tool that's out there. And so I took a workshop back in December and was mind blown by some of the other sort of compositional guides and tools that are available. So I immediately went out to fab.com. Let me see what's currently available out there. I found one tool. It was the only one I could find, and it was okay, but I was like, I think I can make something better. So I decided to dive into creating a camera composition overlays pack. And this is the free version, this first one that you see right here. And it's focused specifically on the standard cameras that come with Unreal. So I created overlay grids for dynamic symmetry, golden ratio, and then there's also like one for center rays, for vertical lines. There's a grid in there. There's a spiral. There's a few different ones to choose from, because inside of Unreal right now, and I can even just pop back over really quick here, present something else, entire screen. Right now, if you go into the cinematic viewport inside of Unreal, oops, let me go back there. If you go into the cinematic viewport inside of Unreal, right now, perspective, right now you have these composition overlays which are available, but it's just, again, the rule of thirds. You have quadrants, and then you have a rebatement, and then you have this crosshair. And that was it. And that was it. So I kind of felt like, you know what? First of all, these tools, I mean, these guides are, I felt were really, really important. But one thing I started to realize is that a lot of my favorite TV shows and films were using golden spiral. They were using dynamic symmetry. They were using these things. And I didn't know what it was until I actually saw it. And I started to make the connection. And I was like, ah, it was like a light bulb moment. Like, this is amazing. This is good stuff. Like, this is what I really want to learn and understand so I can apply it to my own pictures, to my own moving images. So that's really what kind of got me into diving into creating this composition guidelines pack. Let me go back to the presentation really quick here. And so I created an overlay pack. Everything was very specific to the standard cameras that come with Unreal. It's about 13 of them that come with Unreal. And so I was like, well, I would like to try to make something a little bit more dynamic, right? When I started thinking of making something a bit more dynamic, I realized that there are so many other film backs available to choose from and to use. How am I going to apply these assets to these film backs and do it in a dynamic way? Because right now these overlays were very specific to the film back size of the standard cameras inside of Unreal. So I decided I was going to create a plugin. It's a one-click Netflix filmback presets plugin. That's kind of like my little slogan there, that allows you to load in all of Netflix currently approved cameras. And all you're doing is you're bringing in the actual filmback size. And the reason why that's important is because it gives you the field of view for that filmback. Field of view or the filmback size that you choose is just another storytelling tool that you might use. If you're using something that's, you know, like an Alexa 65 that has that's a very large format sensor, you know, you might see that on something like Star Wars or something that has a very grand landscape that you want to show off. You would use something like an Alexa 65, which is a large sensor, and it has a very wide field of view. If you wanted to do something that was a bit more intimate, you might do something that's 16 millimeter, you know, and there's a lot of great movies that were done with 16 millimeters. And that has a much narrower field of view. So again, depending upon the type of story that you're telling, whether it's something intimate or something grand, field of view matters. And so this is one of the reasons why I wanted to create this plugin here. But then I realized that I can't create a overlay for every single film back, because that would just be madness. I mean, we're talking about creating potentially hundreds of overlays. And I said that there's got to be a better way. So that's when I went and decided to create version 2, which will actually dynamically resize all of the root rectangles for dynamic symmetry. It will dynamically resize the golden spiral so that it maintains the correct proportions no matter which film back you apply it to. And then on top of that, there's additional parameters you can use to scale it, stretch it, offset it, rotate it, and so forth. So it'll start you off at the right place, and then you can do whatever you want and break the rules if you please. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about these and just kind of show you these. The first one here, again, is Pro Filmbacks and Crops. This one actually has all the filmbacks for RE, Blackmagic Design, Canon, Panasonic. There's one in there for Panavision that was approved by Netflix, Red, and Sony. And the reason why I went with the Netflix approved list was just because it was an easy list. It kind of covered most of the cameras that people are using out there. But there's other cameras that certainly could be added to the list, but I thought that was a great one-stop shop to try to gather all of that information. So I'll show you how this works in a moment here. The other part of that too is that I went in and also added all of the cinema and social media crops. So right now, I think in Unreal, it's only 4 or 5 that come up as standard. With this plugin, now you can actually add, you know, Univision, Panavision, European widescreen, and so forth. So this makes it really easy to crop your sensor for whatever sort of final view you want to give your audience. And here's just an example. It's just a film back study that I did. This right here, this first image is the Unreal 16:9 standard film back that it comes with. All of these are using 24 millimeter lens at an f2.8. But just so you can kind of see the difference when it comes to field of view, this one here is for an ARRI Alexa LF. You see how much wider the field of view is based on the size of the film back. As the film back gets bigger, the field of view gets bigger, and you can see more within the image. This one is super wide here with the Alexa 65. As you can see here, it's a very large sensor size here, and this is what the resulting field of view would look like with the same focal length and the same aperture. So that's just an example here. Let's let me go ahead and show you really, actually, no, I'm going to keep going because I'm going to show you both the film backs and crops as well as the camera composition overlays working together, because they really work well as a pair. So the next tool I went into was the advanced version of my of my camera composition overlays. And so in this one here, you can see I have like the golden spiral set up here. I think this is on a 16:9 film back. This is just to give you an idea of what it looks like. We'll actually go into a little bit more depth and I'll do a quick demo of it. And then this is what the widget looks like that's controlling the overlays for this. You have all these different buttons here that allow you to select different composition guidelines. And you have all these different additional controls here for manipulating that guide once you have it selected. This is an up close kind of look at what that overlay looks like. You can take a look at this at anytime you want. You can also go to fab.com. You can see how this is all laid out. But we'll actually go into an example here so you can see more specifically how this this pair of plugins work. You come back here. So let's go ahead and switch screens. How are we doing on time? One, pretty good. Let's go to present something else.
This is fascinating what you have created here, Tayo, because I believe, especially being also a professor teaching virtual production and VFX and digital cinematography at graduate level, what I'm finding is the next generation of cinematographers coming into the industry lack this information.
Yeah.
When I was training, and I'm going almost 3 decades back, something that you learned by experience,
right?
How you frame a shot. For example, what is a Dutch tilt? So that's a trick question I ask all my students, and everyone answer, well, because it was a Dutch filmmaker. So it's such an important tool that you've made here, and it's not only for the camera; it's for compositing the scene.
Yes, absolutely.
The lighting, how the light is going to hit a subject, and then how you frame a shot.
Yeah,
this is just fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's something that was missing for me for a long time, and some of it was intuitive, some of it you didn't really figure out, and I think some of it could have been better. Like some of the work, it could have been better if I had some of these types of tools available to me. So I'm hoping that they're as useful for others as they're for me as well. Just so you can get a quick idea, 2 things here. One is, let me go to where plugins are, and I'm just going to type in cam compo overlay. So this is a plugin. It's not the original one was a material instance that you would download, and you apply that material instance as a post-process material to your cinema camera actor. In this case, I actually decided that was a little bit too cumbersome. It's still available. That one's still available for free. You can download that one, and you can use those overlays with the standard cameras that come with Unreal. But if you're looking for more advanced, more flexible manipulation of these grids and the dynamic application of these grids, then the camera composition overlays plugin is something that you might want to check out. And then what I'm pairing with that as well is, like I said, Pro Film Backs and Crops. That's this plugin right here, down here, Pro Film Backs and Crops. And this is the one that will allow you to select different aspect ratios for your sensor sizes or your film backs, as well as for your crops. And so there's 2 different plugins. Once you have those plugins loaded in, you have 2 buttons here that appear above the viewport. This first one here is for adding the camera presets. All the presets have already been added, but if I click that button here, you'll see you get a message that says to restart the editor. And you also get a message down here that's saying all the presets have been added successfully, but you do want to update it to make sure that your default engine.ini file has everything loaded in properly. But they're currently in there right now. You also have this other little blue button here with the quadrant on it. And this one allows you to launch the camera composition plugin. So if I close this out here, I can launch it from here. It actually launches in this position here. I like to move this window around. One of the reasons why I created a widget for this was just the flexibility of being able to move this around here. With the material instance, I couldn't do that. It was a window, but it couldn't find a home. So it was nice to be able to create a widget for it that I could actually place anywhere you want on the screen. And then the other way that you can launch this is from the Windows drop down here at the bottom here. You have camera composition overlays. You can launch it that way. And then the last way that you can launch it, if you come down here and you type in cam compo from the command line and you hit enter there, that'll also launch it as well. So just a few different ways to kind of get into it. I'm going to actually move this over to here. Come on now. I think I want it there. There we go. I lost my details. Where's my, oh, my details panel is right here. I wanted that to be right next to it. So, so just kind of going over really quickly what this interface does. The first thing here is at the top here, you have your camera selection. So whatever cameras that you currently have in your level, the plugin will scan for those cameras and then make them available as a drop down here. So right now I have 3 cameras in here. If I was to add another camera here, if I was to go here to the Cinematography Actor and also just, you know, copy paste this a few times in here, you're going to come here and you now have all these different cameras in here that have been duplicated. You come to the drop down here, you don't see them there. You hit the camera refresh button. You come back here and then they're all loaded in there. The reason why I'm doing this is because the camera refresh button is your friend. When something might seem like it's a little bit off with your overlay or something doesn't quite seem right, you hit camera refresh. It'll make sure that everything is proper once you hit the button. So the other thing that I want to point out here, which is really nice, is this auto button here. So if I click the auto button, what's nice about the auto button is about whatever camera you have selected in the outliner, it'll automatically load it into the plugin here, which is really convenient because that's how most people are working. You just want to be able to select the camera and see it automatically with the overlay being automatically applied. You may have a reason for not wanting to use auto, like if you wanted to select the camera, but you didn't necessarily want it to adjust what's happening in terms of your overlays. You certainly could do that. I usually leave it on. It's just very convenient for me selecting my camera and making sure that I have the right information loaded. And so once you select your camera, you'll see here that it's just pulling the film back information. It's pulling any sort of crop information that may be applied and also the aspect ratio. The other thing here too, and actually let me take this details. I'm going to put this actually below. I think it might work a little bit better here with this being below. I'll scroll this down here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put them side by side here. So right now I have Cinema Camera Actor 3 selected. If I go into the details panel for that camera actor, right here I have no crop selected. Say I want to choose a 276 Ultra Panavision. You see that gets updated here. And then I come back into my plugin here, hit camera refresh. You'll see that it's loaded here. It also gives you a indication that it's been cropped as well. So just a lot of like just kind of good informational things. So as you're kind of working through doing your composition, trying to make it as easy as possible and as flexible as possible for you to stay in that sort of creative space. Some of the next section I want to kind of go over is this the camera positioning portion here. So let's say here that this is my overlay that I want to use. I'm going to hit pilot here, which you can do directly from inside the interface. You could also do that. Actually, I'm gonna close this remote control plugin. You can also do that from up here in the left-hand corner, like you typically would. So this is just a convenient factor to be able to do it from within the plugin interface itself. But as you're in here and you're starting to say do a composition for something, you may end up finding, oh, I want to work right with this camera locked off in this position here. What I found is as I start to kind of go in and start to move things around, sometimes you can see how the camera is starting to move inadvertently there. I accidentally moved the camera. So I just built these little tools in here so that you can store the current position of the camera. Let me come back here. Let's say this is the position I want. I can store it. So now if I accidentally move the camera, I hit recall, it just brings me back to that transform for the camera. Just a convenient feature. Some things that other people have been asking about is actually locking off the movement of the camera, which you typically do from within the outliner. That's something I'm looking at doing at the next version of this plugin so that you can just lock the camera and not necessarily have to save the transform location. But this is how you currently do it at the moment. And then you have the actual overlays themselves here. Let me try to find let's go back into this camera here. I think we're in camera 3 here. Let's create, or let's choose a different focal length. I'm going to go with, oops, come down here. Right now I'm at 35 millimeters. I'm going to do something a little bit wider at 24. And let me move within this shot here. I'm using my space mouse at the moment, which is super convenient, although sometimes it's a little glitchy, maybe a little too glitchy for this at the moment. Here we go. If you go kind of soft, maybe come over here. Oh, I'm outside the shop now. Let's go back inside here. I think I wanted to be maybe up here and down. I feel like this focal length is not wide enough, so I'm actually going to open it up a little bit more. I want to go with 18 millimeters on this, just to give myself a little bit more flexibility here. Come back here. All right, we're right inside here, up in the upper corner here. And then so now I can use these different overlays. Let's go back to the interface here to start composing the shot here. So say I wanted to do something with dynamic symmetry. Right now, for this aspect ratio, you can see down here a root 7 rectangle has been selected here. Now, if this was a smaller film back size, a different size root rectangle would automatically be selected. So there's a lot of math that's happening in the background to select the most appropriately sized root rectangle or to resize your golden spiral to fit properly with the correct proportions for that film back. Now, once you've selected it, you can still do whatever you want. I can scale it in the X and Y direction here if I wanted to. I can rotate it. You know, I can change the colors of it. There's a lot of different parameters here that give you additional flexibility, whatever's going to work for you in that shot. But I just wanted to note that specifically for the dynamic symmetry, let me go ahead and hit reset on all these here. Specifically for dynamic symmetry and the golden spiral, these are true gold. This is a true golden spiral. And this is true dynamic symmetry based on the aspect ratio of your film back, of your sensor size. So for instance, if I was to come in here, let me unpilot. Let me go back into cinema camera actor 3 for a second. Let's go back to details and let's actually change my film back from, well, actually, it's actually basing it on the crop size at the moment, right? So let's say I change my crop size. Let's say no crop, right? And so I have a much, my field of view is not as wide. Let's go back to the composition plugin. I'm going to hit camera refresh. You're going to notice that the crop went away. And now if I hit pilot here and I select dynamic symmetry, instead of a root 7 rectangle, I get a root 3 rectangle. That's correctly sized, correctly proportioned. And again, you can come in here, you can scale it, you can switch it around, you can do whatever you want, but at least you're starting with true dynamic symmetry. And likewise, if I come in here and I hit reset on all of these, for the golden spiral, now this is appropriately sized for this film back. So it'll repeat on the left and right sides for a much wider aspect ratio, and it will fill the screen for smaller ones such as this. Now then you also have these other overlays which do scale to the size of the actual film back. So you have center rays here. Let me turn on the opacity of this to 0.5. You have the quadrants here, which is the default. You have an X here. You have a grid. You have what I'm just calling the parallel lines. You have this one's vertical lines, but if you wanted to do horizontal lines, you just do 100. You just set that to 180 degrees. Whoops, what did I do there? You hit refresh on that. 180. Oh, that should rotate. There we go. Oh, you know what? It's 180. It's 180 degrees. So if it's 90 degrees, it'll go horizontal. 0 will go vertical. I was just basically flipping it around all the way. Sorry about that.
It worked.
So it just gives you a lot of flexibility. You can scale this if you want to add additional vertical lines here. I can make this, I could double the number of lines, or I could quadruple the number of lines, and so forth. You also have in here a spiral here. Let me go ahead and reset that. And you have one of my favorites, which is the phi grid. This is actually the golden ratio as well. And what's nice about this is that it maintains the correct 1.618 proportions, no matter which size film back you're putting this against. It just scales, and all the proportions are still 1.618. So you'll see the use of this in the composition study series. Like I did a composition study on the movie Arrival, and it just scaled perfectly. You can see how Bradford Young and Denis Villeneuve used it to really do some amazing composition with that film. It's one of my favorite films. I also have in here the rule of thirds, and then also have in here this dot grid as well. So that's kind of like in a nutshell here. Again, I was to do a quick study here. If I wanted to say use dynamic symmetry here, I have this line of chairs here that I might want to line up against here. Let's say I do something like this. Actually, you know, say, let me change the positioning of this. Being up in this corner here is a little tough, but we can make it work. Maybe I do something like that when I have all of these lined up here. And I'm actually going to just do a quick shot here. How you might use these to do a shot if you want to use these tools for composition. So right now I have dynamic symmetry set up. You have these chairs here. I might move this here. Maybe if I really wanted this to land directly on the diagonal. Sometimes you don't want things to be on the nose. It's just a suggestion. It's a starting point, depending upon what type of storytelling you're trying to do here. And then let's say here, let's take this chair here. Actually, you know what I'm going to try to do a slightly wider aspect ratio. So let's go up here. Let me see how we're doing on time. I think we're okay. Let me go back up to Cinema Camera Actor 3 here. Let's do details. I'm going to change the focal length on this. We're going to go super wide, 14, right? Now it's getting really wonky here. So we'll do 14 here. I'm going to actually take this chair. I'm going to move it. Oops. Here and here. Let's say I move it in that position here. And then what I want to do is I want to do a level sequence really quickly here. I'm going to add a level sequence. I'm just going to name it the default for now. And I'm going to add this camera, Cinema Camera Actor 3, to the level sequence. Let's just drop it in there. And so right now I have this dynamic symmetry set up here. Now let's say somebody's sitting in this chair, and ultimately I want to do a shot where it's going to kind of hover over the top of this chair here. And let's say I want to try to maintain some compositional rules as I'm kind of moving through the shot. So right now I have dynamic symmetry set up here. I'm going to go ahead. Let me move this up just a little bit here so I can see my timeline better. I'm going to come to transforms here at the beginning, and I'm just going to save this positioning for the camera here. My root 3 dynamic symmetry is all set here. Now let's say ultimately, let's say my final shot, let me come in here and grab the camera. I'm trying to use, I'm not going to use that. Sorry about that. Let me come back to Cinema Camera Actor 3 here. I want to reposition this so that ultimately I'm over the top of this chair here. And let's say, get in here a little bit here. Let's say by the time I get to this position here, let's say I want to have, go back to my camera compositions. I want to have like the golden spiral set up here. Actually, let me flip this. I want to have, say, this coffee cup here be the start of the golden spiral. So let me flip this 180 degrees here. So now I might move this table here. And maybe move this chair out the way a little bit. I'll take this coffee cup and move it there. This would be a great way to use the store and recall here because I keep on shifting and moving a bit. And then maybe I want this chair, oops, to land also on the spiral here too. So somebody sitting here, you're using this spiral as basically a guide for this sort of final position here. Now, let me hit the store for this because when I move this, I forgot. Now I'm moving here. At the end of my shot, I want to land. I'm going to hit recall now, and I'm going to actually save a keyframe here. And now I'm in this position here. So already, right from here to here, I'm going from this dynamic symmetry here, and I'm landing on the use of this golden spiral, right? So that's just an easy way to try to maintain some compositional value throughout the shot that you're trying to create. Let me do one more thing here. Let's say I get to the middle of this here, and I want to instead add another, compositional rule. And instead here, I want to use the phi grid. Let's say there's something about this brickwork here. I want to make sure that it lands in this grid here, or this portion of the frame here. Why not? Let's go ahead and now save that position. And now I have the shot that starts here. It moves over, and then it goes down, and then it lands on this compositional guide here. Not the best shot, but just to give you an idea of like how you might want to use these tools in your shots. This is something that's kind of very rigid in terms of using these compositional tools, but it just gives you the flexibility to be able to use them to create your shots, and then of course break the rules completely as you see fit. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I see this as an amazing tool, especially coming from post-production and being an editor. And we put the footage together, we stitch it together, and we, in a way, refilm the entire story as well. Sometimes, by changing, by zooming in and everything else.
Yes.
So, using the NLE system, the timeline, and your composition tools makes it so much easier for visual artists, especially who don't come from traditional cinematography or photography background, that they can start with the rigid composition rules, but they can also experiment within. So you have three that you have put as your keyframes, but in between each of those, they can experiment. They can do a fly through or whatever they want to make it more dynamic, based on obviously whatever the scene setup or blocking is.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think I think it's something useful, especially this being a game engine. I think Epic didn't necessarily think that, not that they didn't think it was important, it just wasn't at the top of the list in terms of what game engines do. But the more cinematic work that's being done inside Unreal, I just feel like something like this could just be super helpful, at least for beginning cinematographers, or at least even seasoned cinematographers that just want to have a quick sort of visual guide. I think a lot of cinematographers can already see it when they look at the screen, especially if you've got experience. You can already see it, the proportions and where you want things, and where the diagonals are, where the triangles are, where the curves are. I feel like that's just something that becomes second nature for seasoned cinematographers. But for those who are either beginners or mid-level, or again, if you're a senior cinematographer and you just want to have it in there as a guide, just to make sure maybe you're doing a camera and you're holding the camera, you want to make sure that you're maintaining certain triangles or certain angles. It's just a nice guide to have in there. It's just a nice guide. Okay. So that kind of covers both the Pro Filmbacks and Crops plugin, as well as the camera composition overlays plugin. If there's any questions, please let me know. But otherwise, I'll move on to the last portion of this, which is going to be kind of using these tools to do a more in-depth study of some favorite films and TV shows.
No questions at the moment, so I think we can move forward. And one thing that you were talking about with the TouchOS OSC plugin as well previously, and the virtual camera side of things, some of the participants or viewers who might watch this later on don't really understand the difference about just putting a virtual camera inside and how do you actually film with it. If you get a moment, if you want to touch upon that at some point as well, then that would be awesome too.
Absolutely. After this next session, I think we can go back and we can maybe do a little bit more of a workflow of like how someone might start with a scene, how they might set up, parameters or different meshes within that scene, whatever they're looking for from a storytelling standpoint, and then kind of go through the process of maybe even adding a VChem actor in from scratch, how you would add that into the scene, how you would use it to record the scene, and come up with your shot, go through various takes and that type of thing. So I can definitely go back and revisit that. Let me go ahead and share a different screen. Let's see here. All right. So now we're on to our composition study series. Again, the whole purpose of this for me was to acquire a better understanding of the composition methods and mechanics used by directors and cinematographers to make me see what I saw and feel what I felt. You know, this series has a focus on image layout using various techniques, including golden ratio, golden spiral, dynamic symmetry, leading lines, rule of thirds, and so much more. I think if I click on this here, it'll actually open up a link to the composition study series that's available currently on my YouTube channel. Right now, I've currently gone through and have done the movie Arrival. Let me just give you, you can just see an example of what that's like. So the series here, you know, let me go to a specific frame here. I just got to go through and I actually am bringing in a media plate. I'm utilizing OBS to do this. And I'm doing it over the NDI protocol, which is an audiovisual protocol that's used to send audio and video over a network. And I'm bringing that into side Unreal. I'm using the native NDI plugin in 5 that's currently available in 5.6. There were other plugins that were available for 5.4 and 5.5 that were third party, but now in 5.6 there's a native NDI plugin, which makes it a little bit easier to bring in footage. And then even more specifically, actually, let me go back here to my setup here. I can talk that through, hit pause. Here, I'm actually using an iTunes media player to do this study. And what's interesting about the iTunes media player is it's the only one that I could find that will actually output at the aspect ratio of the actual show or movie that you're watching. Otherwise, you're going to get black bars on the top or on the side. But this will actually give you a native aspect ratio for what you're trying to analyze. And then, like I said, OBS to convert to media player using it for all the NDI sourcing and switching, native NDI plugin, native NDI plugin for Unreal. And then I'm using a media player asset and bringing in a video texture asset that I ultimately apply as a post-process material to the cinema camera actor. And I'll show you really quick how I do that. So here, I'll let this play here for a moment while I make sure that my OBS is set up here in the background. And if anybody has any questions, in the meanwhile, let me just get OBS. Where are you? Well, I may have closed OBS. Let me open it up again. Let's go ahead and get this launched here. There we go. And let me select Compo Study here. Let me make sure I have my iTunes Media Player. So let's see here. For iTunes Media Player, I believe I currently have had the movie Gladiator up here, which is the one I'm doing my next study on. And now inside of Unreal, let's go ahead and get out of this for 1 second here. And I can use really any cinema camera actor to set this up. Let me close out of this sequence here. Let's go to the top here for content browser. And the first thing I want to make sure is that my NDI source is actually coming in. So I'm going to double click here. And actually, let me back up 1 second here. This is how you get to this is you come under here and under, I believe it's media. You can come down here and once you have to enable this plugin, the NDI media plugin inside of Unreal. But once you do that, you can now use an asset for as an NDI media receiver to receive NDI sources coming in. That's how I'm doing that. It could be a media file. It doesn't necessarily have to be NDI. The reason why I wanted to do NDI again was because of the workflow between capturing it on my desktop using iTunes. I just found this actually worked really well in lieu of doing it like an MP4 file or using another media player. So I'm going to come into the receiver here. I'm going to select, should be able to select my NDI sources here. I see iTunes Player here. I'm going to open it up, and in a second I should see. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me hit pause. I'm sorry, but I've been sharing my other screen here. I've been sharing my other screen. Let me go back to Unreal and show you what I'm doing there. Was that something else? Entire screen.
Yeah, we were watching your YouTube screen.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
So what I'm doing right now is, I can even show you that too here. I'll bring this over here. It might be kind of hard to see, but inside of OBS, I'm capturing the iTunes media player, which again is in its native aspect ratio of 239:1. And I'm converting this into an NDI source inside of OBS. There's a filter property here. I'm sorry, not property. If I go to filters here, there's a dedicated NDI output plugin that you can apply to any one of your sources inside of Unreal to turn it into an NDI source. So that's how I'm doing that there. Let me pull this out of the way. And then I can bring it in here. Once it's running in the background, I can select my NDI sources here. There's also one other, I'll just mention this too, because there's a lot of little things that are happening in the background. You also need to have NDI Tools version 6 running on your machine. You can go to the I think it's ndi.com or .net. I'm not sure, one of those two, but you can download NDI Tools and it'll allow you to convert, monitor, send, receive, all different types of media, audio and video as an NDI source. So now I have this selected here. I'm receiving this as an NDI source coming in. I'm going to go back here now, and I need to go to my media player. And now inside of my media player, I have this NDI media source here. I'm going to double click that. Wait for that to open. Sometimes it takes a second. It says preparing there. Sometimes I'll close it and I'll just open it up again and it'll pop right up and there it goes. So here's my source coming in. And then now once I have it in a media player, there's a few steps here. I now need to apply this media player to a media texture. So I come into my media texture here. And right now, the media player is showing here, but it's not coming in. It's not importing at the correct resolution. So what I'll do sometimes here, and I'm sorry, there's a lot of behind the scenes to this process, but if you want to do your own sort of analysis, you know, this is one of the ways that you can bring in the media source live that you want to actually work on. I'm going to close this here. I'm going to recreate the media texture. I'm going to delete this here. And it's going to require me to do a few other things, which is fine. And I'm going to recreate that media texture here. Media texture. I'm leaving everything default for the time being. I'm going to double click this now. And now if I select the media player here, it pops right in. Sometimes when you close out and you come back into Unreal, the media texture just shows that little 2x2 pixel resolution. And if you just recreate the media texture, it loads with no problem once you select the media player for the texture. Okay, so we have that set up now. And now I have a material, because ultimately this needs to be applied as a material that's applied to my cinema camera actor so that I can actually see it in the frustum of the camera. And then I have my overlay on top of that. So right now here, I want to, I already had this material set up, and now I just simply need to come in here and select that media texture. Let me see, I think it's new media texture right here. And then I have some other contrast and exposure adjustments that I'm making here, because without them, the screen was very dark here. So this is just some manipulation I'm doing to get it to look pretty much the same as what the original source was. I'm going to hit save on this. Give that a second. And then we're going to come back here, and you can already see that it's being applied to this material instance, which is just a child of this material here that we just created here. I'm now going to select the camera. It could be any camera. I'm just going to go ahead and select this main cinema camera actor here. And the important thing here is that I set the aspect ratio of the camera actor to the aspect ratio of the source that's coming in. So I'm going to go to details. I'm going to scroll down to my crop settings. And this is a 239:1 image. And now if I go back to my camera composition overlays here, I'm going to pilot this. Actually, I'm sorry, before I pilot it, I do have to do one more thing. You come out of there. Let's go back into the camera here. I need to add this as a post-process material to the cinema camera actor. The way that the overlays work is it's being applied as a post-process material anytime you select the camera, but it's happening automatically in the background. I have a whole widget and blueprint widget, editor utility widget that's doing a whole bunch of works to make it really easy for anybody who's doing composition work. But in this case, this is an analysis. This is something kind of separate and special. You do have to go in and add an additional post-process material to that camera and then overlay the composition tool on top of it. And that's how I'm able to do this analysis, just as a point of information. So I'm just going to go in here, type in post-process material, post-pro matte. We'll bring that up. You can see that the overlay is already in there. I'm going to add another array element, and I'm going to choose asset reference. And then I'm going to choose, actually, I already have it selected here, this material instance. And I'm going to select it there. And now you see I have the overlay on top of the actual plate that's coming in. Okay. So now let's go to the camera composition. And again, I know there's a lot of little parts and pieces here to this. If anybody wants to know how to do this, you can just reach out to me. I'm happy to walk you through it if you want to do your own sort of compositional analysis. But it's a little complicated at the moment, but once you have it down, it's pretty straightforward. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to pilot this. And now we have this compositional tool overlaid on top. And I can come in here and select, any overlay I want on top of here while the movie is actually playing here. So let me go ahead and put in 0.5 here. I'm just going to leave this at the default for the moment. I'm going to leave the audio off. Let me find my iTunes player here, which is up top here, and hit play. And you can see now it's streaming in here. And this is what I've been doing to do my composition analysis. I'm going to hit pause here because I actually looked at a couple of frames already. I started kind of breaking this film down, and I'm going to go to a few here that I thought were pretty cool. Let's start off with 3 minutes and I think 52 seconds. I think I saw something. 352 here. That's 355. Let's hit play. Whoop. It's a little glitchy there. 352. Let me hit play so I can play into it. Seems to be a little bit of a lag there. 351, 352. So that's 352, for instance. So 352, I noticed the phi grid being used here. So if I come over here and I hit the phi grid, I just thought that the positioning of Russell Crowe's character Maximus and his right-hand man here, just the way that these guys were positioned here was right on, positioned right here on this vertical line of the phi grid. Just thought it was good placement inside the frame. If I want to try to find something maybe a little bit more interesting, let's go to, let's see here, 516. I think this was also the use of the phi grid. 5. It's 18. If I hit play here, 15, 16. With this one, I think it had more to do with just where Russell Crowe's eyes kind of landed here. And it's in general, the phi grid is kind of being used for the positioning of the eyes. You can kind of even see here as the shot is kind of playing out here. Let me hit pause there for that. So I thought that this was interesting to point out. Let me just show you one more here. Let's see here. I had at 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I thought this was really interesting for when they were going into battle. This is at the beginning of the movie when they were just starting to go into battle here. 8:46. We'll let this play out here. And there's so many frames you could choose from to analyze. I mean, it just goes on and on. But I think right here, it's kind of hard to see as the horses are coming in here, that they were using this quadrant here to essentially hold the line in real life. Like he's, as they're riding through here, he's saying, hold the line, right? And interestingly enough, most of all of the horses and the horsemen were behind this line here. And I can just kind of even let it play through. So it just made me think about how some of these guys may have been being used while the film. I think John Matheson is the cinematographer for Gladiator. And I just think it was just really interesting that they're probably utilizing some of these overlays directly over their viewfinder, you know, to try to help set up their shots. Now, this was the year 2000. This was literally 25 years ago, you know, so this is before, you know, this was before digital. I think digital was just coming in around at that time, but this was shot on film, you know, at that time. So, you know, using some of these sort of compositional rules and guidelines, I think this actually was another shot here. This is 909 here. I think I actually had this, or maybe I didn't. But in any case, just a lot of interesting types of shots that you can cull from your favorite films and TV shows. You know, when I was doing the analysis on Arrival, they really leaned into the use of curves, a golden spiral, symmetry, dynamic symmetry. Like it was very evident throughout the movie. And I just find that to be very interesting, especially since I find that that's one of my favorite movies. And that was before I knew about composition in this manner. You know, I was like, why is this movie so compelling? Why does it feel so good? Why are these images like grabbing me? Why am I watching this movie again for the 4th, 5th time? You know, and it just made me think, well, you know, what is it that these cinematographers and directors were doing to try to get me to stay engaged in the image and to stay engaged in the story? And aside from composition, I mean, there's a lot of other things, you know, that are important, obviously, for cinematographer, from lighting to colors and tone to camera movement. There's many different things, but the composition definitely plays an important role. So that's one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that cinematographers that are using Unreal have available at their fingertips. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover with regards to doing composition studies in Unreal. Again, if this is something that you're interested in doing yourself, please feel free to reach out to me to understand the workflow for this. And as well, you know, follow my composition study series on YouTube to see some of the my favorite films and TV shows that I've already analyzed.
Hey, this is amazing, and the film that you picked is, you know, a absolute winner of everything.
Yeah.
Like, yes, Maximus going to battle. So this is amazing, and I would love to book you right now for the next graduate course that I'll be teaching, which is about narratives and cinematic augmentation. You know, basically doing this. But what you've just covered is such an important aspect. You know, it's not only about, okay, throw a camera and throw the actors and the assets and put it in the sequencer. But majority of the projects that come out on YouTube, and here's a Unreal Engine short and here's an Unreal Engine series, it never feels cinematic, right? It looks very video gamey, and that's the quote unquote word video gamey
Right.
is because the depth of the scene. Yes, it's a 2D scene once it is printed.
Hmm.
Well, sorry, we don't print anymore, but realized, to the film back, it becomes a 2D scene. But the
Right.
depth of that 3D where you were filming, whether it was a live action in the studio, at a sound stage, on location, or inside Unreal Engine,
Yeah.
what you have just shown with your tools helps give that depth of that scene.
Hmm.
Why is soldier number 4 standing the way he's standing?
Right.
You know,
No, 100%. Like it's crazy because this I think is my favorite movie of all time. I've probably seen it 100 times, and there is such a prevalent use of the golden ratio in this movie. Like you'll see it, especially with those large, vast scenes with the Colosseum. The golden spiral is everywhere, and I couldn't see it. I didn't realize what I was seeing until I learned about this and discovered it. I was like, oh my god, it's everywhere, and it was so like engaging. It pulled me in. I was like, there's something to this. There's obviously something to this. You know what I mean? And so
what the right source?
yeah, and I completely agree. Like, there's, one of the books that I recommend, and this is something that was introduced to me by an amazing cinematographer. His name is Yang Duck Jun. He is one of the cinematographers, or was the cinematographer for Crudes, for Kung Fu Panda. I took one of his courses, and he used the book, The Visual Story by Bruce Block. It is fundamental. It's fundamental for anybody who wants to study cinematography. You want to understand how to tell a story visually. It covers everything from space to lines and movement and tone and color and rhythm. Like it really checks all the boxes. And if you can commit that to memory and understanding it, and using tools like this, everything you do will look cinematic.
Yeah,
Everything you touch will look cinematic,
yeah, and I mean, the book that you mentioned, that's an amazing book. Teaches you so much about compositing your scenes and directing in general. And the way you have taken Unreal Engine from just being a game engine
Mhm.
to a actual cinematography tool. This is fascinating.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the other one that book that I loved, and if I can add to it, is the Filmmaker's Eye. The
Mm,
rules or learning and breaking the rules of cinematic composition. I think that's what it's called. I
mm,
don't remember who wrote it,
yeah.
but that's another book. Amazing, amazing.
The Filmmaker's Eye. I got to make sure that I peep that one too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, so this is what I wanted to show for this. This kind of like mostly wraps up everything that I wanted to cover. Let me go back to my slides here just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Presents our screen here. Let's share that. And I think we're going. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I selected the wrong screen. Entire screen. Oh, here we go. Share. Let me put that down and go back to the presentation here. So let's see what else here. Oh, so I think I just want to talk really briefly about what's next in terms of some of these different tools and some of the things that I'm working on. Again, trying to continue to build on a set of tools for cinematographers inside of Unreal, just so they can make awesome imagery and cinematic imagery. So the next version of camera composition overlays that I'm working on is version 3. And version 3 is going to be a significant shift and upgrade from version 2. Version 3 is actually going to introduce automated selection of compositions within a 3D scene. So it'll utilize the existing overlays, but it's going to essentially, without getting into too much detail, scan a scene, a 3D scene within, I'm planning to do it within a particular volume, not just an entire environment. But if you choose, say, a volume, it'll scan within that volume compositions that fit within a specific focal length and with a specific overlay. So
there's a prediction model that's going to be in there.
yes, it'll be analyzed. It may not. I was thinking of a couple of different ways of doing it, and it not necessarily a prediction model, but it will utilize the mesh distance fields, which already have depth, and you have an idea of where things are, and then using the overlays to essentially in 360 degrees to find overlays or find compositions that match up to the overlays. It's something that's currently I'm working on. It's currently in process. It's something that probably won't see until early 2026 when I can find time to keep working on it. But that's one tool I think I'm really excited about, especially for someone who doesn't maybe understand composition. It's kind of like it's a little bit of a shortcut. Show me all the dynamic symmetry within this volume at a focal length of 50 millimeters and at f-stop of 2.8. You know, and it can give you some starting points, an idea of, oh, okay, maybe I have to move this mesh here, maybe I have to move that mesh there. I need to add things, but that's the idea. That's the idea. The other thing is I'm working on Pro Cinema Lens pack, which would be lens profiles for all of the cinema lenses that are currently available out there, from ARRI to Sigma to Panavision, you name it, Zeiss primes and so forth. And so there are people who are currently out there doing this now. They're creating lens profiles, you know, based on you know, distortion grids, and people are creating ST maps and then applying those to a lens component within the cinema camera actor. And the reason why these are really important, certainly they're very, very important when you're doing live action and you're matchmaking live action to the CG world. You need the lenses to look the same. You need the same lens information, the same distortion that you have on the live action needs to also be applied to whatever you're match moving or matchmaking and bringing into from the CG world into live action. But it also helps to give a sense of realism as well. The image isn't flat. Like, you know, in the real world, you know, optics are not perfect, you know, and you need distortion on the ends. You need aberrations. You need a bunch of different things that post-process volumes can also do, right? Inside of Unreal. But if you want, you know, if you want the feel of an ARRI prime 50 millimeter, right? And you may want to emulate your favorite movie or TV show, and that's what's going to inspire you to get that look. It would be great to be able to bring these sort of distortion grids into Unreal. And this is something that a lot of houses will do once they get their live footage back. You know, they'll create distortion grids for the VFX team, so that they have, you know, that application of that distortion, you know, being applied when they finalize their shots. But I think it's something that can certainly be done. You know, if you're just working completely in Engine and you want to have that look and that feel, then this could definitely be a great tool for you. So that's something I'm currently working on. I'm looking at partnering up with a rental house company to be able to really do, like, for not just for Super 35, but also for full frame, and then maybe one other sensor size, and trying to cover both spherical and anamorphic lenses. But again, there are other people who are doing similar things out there. I'm doing this in partly because I want to add it to my tool set, and also it's for my own edification. But this is something where you can find, actually I've only found maybe one person who's actually doing it and giving it away for free, which I'll reference that in the next slide. But most people are doing this in-house for their own productions.
Yep.
And then the last thing is just my NIU and Nubia IP is something that I'm currently working on. This is something that has been in-house for the last 3 to 4 years. It's one of the reasons why I really pushed to get into animation, because I wanted to have tools at my fingertips for being able to tell these really crucial and critical stories. And so this is something that I'm finally getting to a point where I'll be able to churn out a few shots and share some of that story with you. But that's, again, something that probably won't happen until the end of 2025, early 2026.
Cool.
Recommendations. I think that we talked about the visual story. I can't recommend this book enough. Like, if you have this book and you read it and you own it and you really learn it, you will have most of what you need as a cinematographer when you're approaching the narrative and the storytelling pieces of your shots. It's really, really instrumental, really crucial, highly recommended. I'm still reading it like over and over again and learning from it. And I recommend it for anybody else who's serious about cinematography and visuals. The next tool here is by Black Eye Cameras, Black Eye Technologies. They created a procedural camera control system that is awesome. It's really cool. I've, I actually have it. I have yet to fully dive into it, but I've sat through demos with it. I know both Adam Myhill and Gerald, who's the engineer over at Blackmagic, actually went to Unreal Fest this past year in Orlando, and they did a demo of it. And it's just fantastic what they're doing with that. Strongly recommend that you add something like this to your overall cinematography tool set for creating some really organic and interesting, procedurally controlled shots. And then this last one here is Tide TKE. This is one of the cinematographers out there that have created lens distortion profiles, I believe for like a Super 35 sensor that he's made available for free on Gumroad. So if you want a starting point to try to get a feel for adding this to your overall cinematography tool set, this is a great starting point. And again, the stuff that I'm doing is going to build on similarly things like this, except I want to try to cover more sensors than just the Super 35.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what I have. I don't know if there's any questions or.
Amazing. I mean, is that it?
Did I cover everything?
Wow. Well, this is absolutely amazing. I knew we were worried about time, and look, it's 1 hour 45 minutes.
Just made it.
How did you squeeze everything in there? Must be the overlays and the composition of the whole thing. Right? What an incredible journey we've just been on. I mean, I'm blown away, and I'm really so happy. It took a little bit of time because you were extremely busy, but I'm so glad that we could actually get you on this episode of Inside the Dojo, not only for walking us through your technical mastery, but for reminding us, and even me going back to the grassroots now, that every tool, every lens, every frame is in fact an opportunity to tell a story that matters. The approaches to virtual cinematography that you have taken isn't just about matching the specs and using the tool, but it's about honoring the emotion, the culture, and the craft. And to everyone watching, whether it's production that you're deep inside or even just starting out, let today be a reminder for you. You don't need to wait for permission to create something that is going to move your audiences in a meaningful manner. This technology is here, this community is here, and if you're willing to learn, explore, and take risks, you already belong in this space. So, this is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you gave me the opportunity to present this. I hope it has been, useful for whomever is watching. And, I'm completely open and available. And I try to put my contact information here because I love having conversations around visual storytelling. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I'm always interested in not only just sharing my visual stories, but hearing others to be inspired. And whatever I can do to help, whether it's with tools or with guidance or just feedback, I am more than happy and more than willing to participate. So thank you again, Jesse, for giving me an opportunity to present my workflows and tools. And, I hope that this was helpful for everyone.
Absolutely. And look, for everyone watching here at Virtual Production Dojo, we are not just a community of educators, but we are also proud filmmakers, but we are also learning every single day. As Tayo mentioned, things are changing drastically, but the principles of storytelling remain constant. If you can understand and establish your toolkit and not only rely on the tools, but focus on the solution, focus on the storytelling, that is going to take you beyond just an amateur filmmaker. You do not need a producer to greenlight your film necessarily.
That's right.
If you can create something that is really cinematic, people watch it. For example, as you mentioned, Tayo, with The Gladiator, why have we watched it so many times?
Right.
The golden ratio all throughout the place, right? So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
pleasing to the eye, and that is what really matters. At Virtual Production Dojo, we invite you to explore our free and accessible courses, dive deeper into the real-time filmmaking, and surround yourself with others who are just as passionate about evolving your craft of storytelling. Thank you once again, Theo, for sharing your knowledge, your story, and your vision. And thank you all for being here with us on the dojo. Until next time, keep creating, keep learning, and keep framing the future.